Most people know me as Judge Hatchet. I am a native of the city, love Atlanta, and happy to be back home. But today I had the real privilege of moderating an amazing panel of people who have worked. This is not some theory, they have worked. They have been on the battlefront. But this is going to be an unusual kind of, not so much I would say unusual, it's going to be a different format in that I'm going to give a brief overview of who they are, which really doesn't do justice to them. For the sake of preserving time, especially since we were starting late, we want to pack as much into this session as we possibly can. And we are going to not do so much talking to you as that we are going to really try to respond to as many questions. There may be some pressing things on your heart, panelists, that you want to get out before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, but we really want to have this be a session that is helpful to you and practical to you, and that you'll leave here saying, golly, I sure am glad I was in that session, because so many of you in different ways have said, we're here for information, and that's what we hope to share. And in the process, we'll learn from you in this process. So I'm going to start with Judge, the Honorable Thelma Wyatt Moore, who is a retired judge, attorney, counselor now with her own law firm, Moore Law, LLC. I have known Judge Moore forever, and so this is hard for me to synthesize and make short. But since her initial judicial appointment by the late, great Mayor Jackson, she has been a judicial officer, served on the bench for some over 30 years. She became the first woman to serve on the bench of the Atlanta Municipal Court and the first African-American woman to serve on the state courts of Georgia. She is the first woman to serve as Chief Judge of the Superior Court of Fulton County and is the architect of the Fulton County Family Court and its Family Law Center, which of course is very dear to my heart because of the things that we see with our families and our children. She was re-elected 6 times, counted 6 times. She has been committed to public service. She is a brilliant woman. She has her undergraduate degree from UCLA, BA from UCLA, and graduated from the Emory University School of Law with distinction. Be clear, distinction. She has served as an adjunct professor at the university at Emory, and the list goes on and on. But what I want to tell you is that my sister judge is committed to justice and equality under the law. Janice Mathis, Esquire, is VP of CEF based in the Southeast Region office in Atlanta. This organization works to engage youth, to prevent home foreclosures, stop voter suppression, and end the death penalty. She promotes positive images of women, high quality, public education, public transportation, and equal opportunity in public and corporate procurement. In 2004, she testified about civil rights abuses in the U.S. in Geneva before the United Nations Committee Against Torture and Cruel Treatment. She has served on diversity committees for various corporations. She has helped negotiate diversity pacts with various corporations, and she just whispered to me that she has been a member of the bar for some 40 years. Aside from all that she's doing, she is also an attorney. I told her she was lying, and she said, not unless I can't do math anymore. I said, you're lying, you haven't been for years. She and her sister, Davida Mathis, her sisters-in-law on News and Talk 1380 WAOK. She earned her degree from Duke, her undergraduate degree from Duke in economics and public policy, and her JD from the University of Georgia. To your left is the DA, Robert D. James Jr. He is the district attorney for DeKalb County. He was sworn in that position in November 2010. He oversees 155 employees administering an annual budget of more than $12 million. and prosecuting more than 8,000 felonies each year. He's a graduate of Middle Tennessee State University, where he earned his BA degree in history, and after graduation he moved to Atlanta, smart move, and he earned his Juris Doctorate from Georgia State University. Prior to becoming the DA, he served in the DeKalb County Solicitor General, and in 2000 he launched the Jobs Not Jail, a year-long initiative providing first-time offenders with the opportunity to complete their education. It goes on, but again, I want to try to use the time, and you'll hear more about them as they are discussing. We are expecting one other panelist, and that is Judge Hegler. She is the Chief Judge of the Juvenile Court in Fulton County, and DeKalb County. I was the Chief Judge of Fulton County. She is the Chief Judge of DeKalb County. Thank you, Mr. T. And I will share more about her if she's able to join us. All right, Mr. PA, since you're the only man on the panel.
Ladies first.
Yeah, right? All right. And we had one other panelist in your program who was not able to join us today, and that is Dr. Cedric L. Alexander, and we certainly are sorry that he couldn't join us. So I don't want you to be looking at the program going, what? But we've got three powerful voices here. And so, Judge, it sounds like the DA is deferring to you, and I will start with you. You don't have to make an opening statement if there's something pressing on your heart. If not, I'll start with some questions.
I would just give my view at having been in the criminal justice system as a judge for over 30 years, along with our topic of violence, America's problem. This, as we know, is America's epidemic. But when we think about how America was founded on violence, violence is a part of the crux of America. And the questions we have to ask ourselves in strategizing the solutions is, how do we get out of, how do we escape that history of violence, particularly with our young people, but with many others. And so I'm hoping we can get to some ideas and solutions today.
Wonderful. Yes, you want to reserve yours to later?
I always have something to say. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's delightful to be here, to be thinking proactively about solutions and not just rehashing the problem. And when I think about this area, you heard a lot of stuff about economics and business in the resume. That was very nice. Thank you, Judge. I came to that conclusion after 20 years of practicing law in the trenches in rural parts of northeast Georgia surrounding Athens. When I started going to courtrooms, and it was just 35 years, not 40, almost there. It was very often I was the first black attorney that my judges had ever seen, because it's been that recent that we started to practice law outside the confines of 285, where it's relatively safe. And what I saw over and over again were a couple of things. I'm going to list them real quick and then I'll be done. We start too late. By the time a child is 12, 15, 17, or 20, their values are fixed, their personalities say. That's not to say that great reentry programs don't work, but if we need to start at 2, 3, 5 while they're still paying, we start too late. It's the economy, stupid. One of the things we've got to do is convince the larger society that economic deprivation leads directly to dislocation, crime, and violence. I'm not sure the larger society believes that. I got a favorite movie, Trading Places. It took Eddie Murphy like 15 minutes to become the good guy once he had some money. And by the same token, the dude with the money turned into a thief in about a day when he couldn't get something to eat. And we don't make that connection. Stop calling the police. If it is a family dispute with no violence, no weapons, A lot of moms I saw would call the police to correct their child's behavior. Situation spins out of control with a lot of unintended consequences. Call the preacher, call the Boy Scout leader, call Judge Thelma. Stop calling the police if you don't want guns used on your child. And we got too many guns, too much death, and too much time being in. Our prisons are turning into nursing homes. Too much diabetes because we got too much time. It's not me saying that. Relatively conservative Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court says we give out too much time. So with that, I'll stop and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Mr. DA?
Well, I would say, from my observation, we are what we eat. We are what we consume. And so I'm not talking about food. I'm talking about pop culture. I'm talking about music. You know, we wonder, you know, I sit in the DA's office. I've been prosecutor for years, and children, you know, as young as 9 and 10, or if you're talking about juvenile court, you know, 11, 12 years old, all the way up to adults, they come in and they commit horrific acts of violence, you know, and everybody's angry at them, and people are afraid of them, and every now and then we ask the question, how did this child or how did this man get this way? Well, we are what we consume. We consume violence on a daily basis when we turn on our televisions, you know, and it hasn't always been that way. You know, I mean, if you look at the number of murders that a child sees on television or in video games, just in one day, it's and if you compare that to 40 years ago, it's insane. If you listen to how violence against women and against other people is advocated in popular culture and music, it is absolutely insane and ridiculous. And I was the one with the cardboard, you know, I break the cardboard box up and spin on my head in the driveway, and people were driving by looking at me like I'm crazy in the early 80s. But I saw the transition when our culture and our music started becoming violent and started glorifying violence. You know, and so we are what we consume, we are what we eat, and part of the issue that I have is that, you know, we consume and glorify violence on a daily basis. Now this is a very complex issue, and so I'm not going to oversimplify it or be disingenuous and say, well, you know, if we just stop listening to you know, and I'm not indicting rap music, we just stop listening to rap music, everything will be better. No, it's an economic issue. You know, we're talking about jobs. I had breakfast several years ago at a prosecutor's conference with a then Newark DA, you know, and she said to me, she said, listen, the unemployment rate for black men in Newark, New Jersey is 25%. What do they expect I'm going to do, you know, about the homicide rate here, you know, about the crime rate? It's 25%, you know, and it's probably higher than that. The dropout rate is astronomical in Newark. I've got an employee in my office that works there, you know, it's an educational issue. It's a parenting issue. It's, you know, and it's also an issue of apathy with the rest of us. Booker T. Washington said, cast your buckets down where you stand or where you are. And we have to start taking on the mentality that we are in a state of crisis in this country, and we have to cast our buckets down where we are. There are children just a few miles from here that need to be mentored. I was working with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, you know, and I'll tell you, there is a waiting list for young black men, you know, there's as long as Peachtree Street. You know, and when I went in and volunteered to mentor, you know, and you know, there's nothing wrong with cross-racial mentoring. It's great, but I was ashamed because, you know, there were more white men that were standing in line to mentor young black boys than there were African American men with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. That is a problem that has to be corrected, and we don't need PhDs to do it. All we need to do is cast our buckets down where we are. And with that, I'll leave it to the good judge.
All right, thank you very much. We have a lot to chew on. I would add one simple phrase is that we can't cure it, fix it, unless we understand it.
That's right.
And I'll give you a quick example of a child in my courtroom who had stabbed another child to death. And it's quick to write him off. It's quick to write him off. But if you start peeling back the layers of that case situation, he saw his mother's live-in boyfriend stab her to death. He was shifted off that you gotta understand it to cure it, to be able to fix it, because there was such rage in him. No mental health intervention, no mentoring. He was just warehoused in a group home. And on the bus that day, he had something sharp and he just lost it and killed another student. Tragic. I'm excusing it. I'm just saying we have to understand the genesis. We have to understand the roots of these problems. And so I again welcome you all to this 4th summit. I think it is appropriate that the topic this year is on violence. Deborah Prothos-Stith, who is originally from Atlanta, went on to get Spelman undergrad, went on to get her medical degree from Harvard, said more than 20 years ago, she said violence is an epidemic. It is a medical issue on multiple levels, and surely she has turned out to be right. I'm going to open it up immediately so we can just have this rich conversation. The mic's in here. Now let me tell you, this is not a PhD thesis. I need a question, and I need it to be brief because we want to be able to engage as many people as possible. Is that fair? Yes. All right, so questions, opening it up for questions so we can get this discussion rolling. Yes. Do you need the mic?
No,
okay. No. Okay, you can stand up though. Oh, you know why? Because the videographers are having a tough time. Yeah, I saw you over there going,
Good morning.
Good morning.
So my question goes around police stopping our young men. And I have 2 young men that I'm raising. And I raise them to have a voice, to know their rights. As young as elementary, went over the Constitution and other things. So the question...
Talk louder in the back, they can't hear you. Is that, tap that mic, do we have...
No, it's not.
Oh, that's the problem. All right, here we go.
My question goes in reference to police stopping our young men and knowing their rights and being able to voice their rights. I am raising 2 young men, and as raising them, I have raised them to have voices, to know their constitutional rights. As soon as they were in elementary school and they were able to comprehend, I've taught them to have a voice and understand things and know all history. So we actually had a nice debate in my office in regards to, do you tell your kids to go ahead and say, ask the question, why are you stopping me, versus just go ahead and complying? So I'm just really interested to hear from y'all how y'all feel.
Let's start with the DA on that question. Because I have 2 sons who are now grown men, but I get it.
I think at the end of the day, you want your children to come home and be safe. And I always tell young people when I speak with them, get a look, know your rights. If you feel like your constitutional rights were violated, get a lawyer. But the side of the road is not a courtroom. You don't litigate a case. At 9 o'clock at night on the side of the road. You comply, and you hire a very good lawyer. And that very good lawyer, if your rights were violated, will come in and litigate it. And quite frankly, if it's clear your rights were violated, if it's gone to a good DA's office, and they will do the right thing before it even gets in front of that good judge. But you're putting your life at jeopardy if you're on the side of the road litigating and not complying and resisting. And that's just not a wise practice. I've been pulled over in my life, even while I was a prosecutor, quite frankly, and I didn't always agree with why I was pulled over. And sometimes, knowing my rights very well, I knew I wasn't pulled over for the right reason. It was before I started being on television all the time and stuff. But but back when I was an assistant, I remember driving through, East Atlanta and Hosea, going back into the city of Atlanta, leaving DeKalb County in the early 2000s when that was a high drug area before, it got built up through gentrification. And I'd get stopped all the time. And being a lawyer, a prosecutor with a badge in my pocket, I still complied until the officer did what he or she needed to do. And I think it's just the best practice.
I think we would all agree with that. Next question. Yes. Can you come? Why don't we, the people who have questions, why don't you kind of come down to the front and fill up some of these seats? No, don't go back. Just come on. Keep them coming. So we'll just stack them up.
Okay.
Okay?
Wherever
Did we get the mic fixed? No. Here we go. Why don't we just keep mine? There. Thank you, Judge Wyatt.
Once again,
That's her.
So my question here, in moral school medicine, totally believe violence is a public health issue. When we're working with young people who are in schools, I would love to know your thoughts on when schools are calling the police for things that when we were in high school, we had in-school suspension, we had out-of-school suspension, but now we're faced with working with youth who have a criminal record at the age of 13 for something that we would have gotten inter-school or out-of-school suspension for, and then that leads them right on that school-to-prison pipeline. So I would love to know your thoughts on that, and how can we, as community members, help work with our schools on disciplinary issues to keep the police out of those situations if they're not truly warranted.
Hopefully, we will still have school boards that are under our voting control and they won't be taken over by the government. We need to participate in establishing the policy that would enable the principal, the assistant principal, the counselors, the school resource officer to be there and properly handle the child rather than calling in the police. Because quite honestly, I'm scared of the police. You know, I'm not going to stop in a dark place with the police. If they try to stop me, I'm going to try to move to a populated, lighted area because of the way things are happening at this time, and there seems to be an epidemic of that violence for some unknown reason. I don't know if it's because many of these people may be suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they just believe, and they've only been taught to use force rather than to tailor it to the situation, such as dealing with students, dealing with children whose brains haven't even been formed completely. And they have no training in that. I wish Cedric Alexander was here, because when police officers go into schools, they need to have that level of training. You don't just need to send your homicide unit out, or the people who deal with the real bad folk. You need to deal with people just in domestic violence situations. They require training for that, supposedly. But we need people who know how to deal with young children. And of course, at age 13, unless they're tried as adults, they would not have a record. But if they are tried with adults, that would follow them the rest of their lives.
And to that important footnote too, thank you, Judge, is that we have to be careful to expunge our juveniles records. And
Yes.
most parents and guardians don't know that there is a process.
Yes.
And while I was on the bench, I fought hard for it to be automatic if a child had not come back to the bench. But I was a lone voice in the wilderness. But that's something that needs to be taken up again. Because a kid, even though it's juvenile, is trying to get into the military services. That's the only way he or she is going to be able to go to college. And, it's a problem. So, yes.
Yeah. And one of the things in DeKalb is that our DeKalb County Police Department is actually not in our schools. So we don't have a school in DeKalb County where DKPD or homicide or major felony is actually policing the school. I'll also tell you, there are two sides of it. One, I believe that we've moved too hard in the wrong direction, which is criminalizing behavior that used to be something you would get suspended for or handled in school. So I saw that happening with the rash of school shootings. Quite frankly, that's when you really saw it turn up around the. Am I talking loud enough? Because they're really loud over there. This microphone off. So that's when you really saw it happening. I need to shout too.
Where's my cowbell?
Yeah. But you really saw it start happening around the school shootings around the country, and some of them happen even here in Metro Atlanta. But I'll say on the other side, my first job before I became an attorney was a teacher's assistant in inner city Atlanta. And I see Alvin Dollar here. He was over the Dunbar Center, and I was working next door as a young 21-year-old man as a teacher's assistant at Dunbar Elementary. And I can tell you, even the young kids were very violent. I was kicked in the groin, I was punched in the face, and I'm talking about 8 and 9-year-olds. I saw one 8-year-old try to stab another 8-year-old with a pair of scissors, and I had to break that up. And so these are just kids, and so imagine what a lot of these administrators are dealing with by the time they get to high school. And and my father is a retired educator, and he saw the transition where they would just call the coaches in, but it got to the point where he was getting involved in physical altercations on a weekly basis, and they had to bring in SROs, which are basically police officers in school. So, it's a complex issue, but I would tell you, I think we've gone too far in one direction, but I don't know if every school is necessarily safe for the teachers that work there either. So.
And we saw the most recent example of that in Columbia, South Carolina this week. But I'll tell you, all they had to say is, I'm gonna call your mom and daddy. And so some of this really goes back to parenting and us taking responsibility as a community and not just showing up at the school to curse the teacher and the principal out, but rather to be involved and be hands-on and really try to rebuild that community. Yes.
I just wanted to add, the latest evidence about the young lady in South Carolina was that she was a ward of the state.
Yes.
Are you surprised? No.
No.
There's no mama to call.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
No, I'm next.
Oh, you're next. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you are next. Please forgive me.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, morning.
Oh, he has a handheld for you now. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to thank you all for being here. Judge, you kind of hit on what my question was, but from the juvenile justice perspective, as well as the educational perspective, I'd like to know what is in place to address the generational trauma of, the socialization process from the parents. Because, as you said, this is learned behavior. This is coming from the family, parents need to step up to the plate, but many of them don't know that. So how are we addressing the generational trauma in the socialization process?
I would,
Thank you.
Thank you.
This problem is of such magnitude that it would be easy to become hopeless.
Yes.
And just to say there's nothing we can do when you get to that level, as you stated, of 12, 13 years old, maybe they're beyond reach or beyond molding, but I'm an eternal optimist. I believe each one must reach one. Even if it's just me reaching one person, but hopefully my scope can be even larger. Hopefully yours with your programs, yours with the juvenile court. Judge Mark Anthony Scott is here. He can reach people from the bench and look them in the eye.
Where are you, Judge? Stand up. So oh, right there. I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Judge. I wanted to.
Superior Court.
When you were on the bench, I had hair. They beat me down.
I would have recognized you. Thank you for being here.
So, in reaching kids, we do what we can. Let me give you an example. Dr. Joseph and his late wife, Evelyn Lowry, have an institute at Clark Atlanta University.
Yes.
Their program is the Change Agent program, where they are training college students to go into the elementary, middle, and high schools and to teach nonviolence, to teach resolution of conflicts. All of these things are going on right now in the Atlanta Public Schools. I just reviewed the contract for them the other day. because I serve on the board. And even though we may have 50 change agents, just imagine how many young people they can reach in these schools. It's not enough. We need you. We need your program. And so there are some things that are being done, and each of us can think of an initiative or reach somebody and tell them how noble they are, particularly as African Americans. You know, it's amazing we're still here after all we've been through. It's amazing we survived the crossing. How rich a history we have. How do you dare slay another brother? How do you dare wear your pants down so we see your buttocks? These are things, the pride they should have in who they are. And these are things we must teach them. So I truly believe that a lot of it, other than what they've seen in their home, it's still a vestige to me of slavery. And where we were taught we were inferior, we couldn't do anything, we were uneducated, and education needs to go along with the economics so they can learn these things and they can be prepared to be decent contributing citizens. So I do believe that there are things we can do. I once had a young man on the bench. He was charged with armed robbery, and he sat there, and it started out with a stolen car or something. It might have been a Cadillac that was stolen. So I said, "Oh, so you wanted this Cadillac?" He said, "No, I want me a Benz." You know, so how is he gonna get a Benz? He gonna take yours. That's how he's gonna do it. He has to learn. We have to try to educate him to be prepared so that he can have some of the things in life that people want. Most of all, values, peace of mind, a family that loves you.
I could just add a comment about that. I was thinking back over the years, we had in Athens something called mentors for moms. Because often when you're dealing with either the justice system or the school system, mothers may themselves not feel adequate to talk to a judge on their child's behalf or know what to say to the principal when they go in for the individual education program, IEP. So we would dress up in our suits, you know, a bunch of college-educated, fairly young black women, and go with the mother. You could call us and we'll be your buddy for the day and go with you. You don't say anything necessarily, just sit there and look intelligent. Might not be, just look intelligent. And the other thing that we do, my sister and I, the way we got started with the show is because we ran into so many people. I tried a case down in, actually it was an appeal in Augusta. Young man from an upstanding Christian family, dad had been in the military and they moved back to Augusta. He decided for kicks he'd go rob a federal credit union. Nobody told him he might as well rob Bank of America. Because the federal credit union carries the same penalties. We do the show so that people understand something about the consequences of criminal behavior. Before, me and Mawuli Davis laughed. We said, we need a TV show where call us before you go do something. So we can tell you about the mandatory minimum, the mandatory minimum before you do it. Get the legal advice. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And we say that facetious, but we're really not.
They've given me the time check. We've got 15 minutes. We're going to get a lot done in 15 minutes. Yes, ma'am, the woman with the microphone.
Good morning.
Can you stand?
What my concern is that the issue of problem solving. You alluded to the issue of slavery, and I'm hearing, even including Mr. James, say that to just cooperate, and I think that all that is cyclical to the color of our skin. And so my concern is, what are we going to do? Because the foundation of all of this, as we began with, is the fact of this is a violent country. Black people did not come here, through Ellis Island. So what is it that we're going to do? The Million Man March just happened. No coverage for that. now we've got Black Lives Matter, and there's the concern about, the FBI trying to shut that organization down. What is your positions in referencing to how do you feel about Black Lives Matter? Because we have to do something. Things can't just be as they are, and we have discussions about it. What are some specific things that we need to be able to do as a community, as people?
We got it. And not to cut you off, but I really want to be able to try to get as much done.
Sure. Well, there are a host of things that we can do. One of the things that we have to do is and I love the activism, by the way. I think the activism through Black Lives Matter and a lot of other groups is forcing a conversation that, quite frankly, we should have been having for the last 30 or 40 years, maybe even longer than that. But I think that there's some things that we can focus our energies toward that will bring about maximum change. One of them is mass incarceration. And it's something that we don't really talk about enough, and we don't question enough. Why do we lock up the people that we lock up, and why do we lock them up for the length of time that we lock them up? We need to re-examine the concept and the idea of mandatory minimums. We need to look at inequities in terms of granting of bonds for low-level nonviolent offenses, and why is it that a person that is that lives in Buckhead, if their son commits a burglary, he's bonded out in 2 days. But if it's Bankhead and you're and you're poor, then that bond's not going to be, that bond may be granted, but if he or she can't make a $2,500 bond, they may sit there for 3 months, or even 2 weeks longer, and that causes all types of problems. And so there are a lot of conversations to be had, but I think the conversations need to be around solutions. I think people are angry in the country right now, and they have every right to be angry, but I think that there's some constructive solutions and some constructive things that can be put on an agenda that can be asked for that I think will, really change things, and earlier when I said cast your buckets down where you are, that's what I was alluding to, nobody is, there's no fence up around, the hood that keeps us from going down there creating, mentoring programs and literacy programs. I did just that when I was a law student, and these two folks know it right here because Mr. Dollar was mentoring me and I was working for Judge Scott, who was the defense lawyer at the time. I was spending my summers, in the Mechanicsville, Pittsburgh area, creating summer camps and after-school programs and mentoring, and I was doing it for free, and there were 2 other grad students from Clark, Atlanta that were doing it, and nobody kept me from doing that. So a lot of things can be solved just by us getting involved. And so a lot of this energy that you see in the country is great, but I like to see the energy focused back towards the hood, and succeeding. So
Judge Moore wants to weigh in on this, and then we're going to get to, I know you have been waiting patiently.
Black Lives Matter, and we have to continue that despite all kinds of attacks by other people that is generating violence against police officers. That's not what's doing it. But the thing we have to look at is the importance of the people who are making the decisions on us. We have to vote. Other people to vote, and we don't just have to vote at the top of the ballot. We have to go all the way down the ballot. The judges, the district attorneys, commissioners, anybody, if a dog catcher were on there, you need to go down that ballot, and you need to vote intelligently.
Yes.
So you have to educate yourself. The day before or the day of an election, I get calls from people, who should I vote for? For judge. I don't know any of these people. Well, judges can't raise that much money for the election, so they're not on TV. But go to your community meetings and find out who these people are and who's going to act in our best interest. When I was on the bench, I tried to get alternative sentencing, particularly based upon what the DA here has said. Our sentences are too long and so forth. But they didn't do anything about it. Now Governor Deal is trying to do something about it, not to save our young black men, but because it's costing too much. But however they get there, I'm glad they're there. But the reason is not a humanitarian one. The reason is it costs too much to feed them and give them medical care.
Attorney Mathis?
Judge Moore, you said earlier that we got to be concerned about the policy. You do know that racial profiling is not illegal in Georgia. You do know that there's a bill every year in the legislature where some Tyrone Brooks or somebody like that tries to introduce legislation to outlaw racial profiling. It never makes it out of committee. If this many people were to show up at the committee meeting in Judicial and say we want racial profiling to become illegal in Georgia, it would at least get out of committee. So that's something very concrete, and there are lots of things like that.
They've told me 10 minutes, and so quick questions, please. And Judge, I'll get you in this.
Very quickly, thank you so much. DA Robert James, I just have a question about the economic piece that you were speaking of earlier. You say that to seek legal counsel, good legal counsel. Okay, what does that mean for our young black people, our families that those young black people are a part of? And what alternative do you suggest if they can't get that legal counsel, that quality legal counsel from an economic standpoint? Because as we know, most young black men are a part of low-income families, okay? And also, if IA is a suggestion, okay, what do you do as an alternative to that as well? Because some IA cases are ignored.
Okay. Well, you said good legal counsel, and I think the suggestion is that somehow, the public defender's office is bad and poor legal counsel. The only county I have experience with in DeKalb, and I don't know what the judges would tell you, but I think our public defender's office is probably one of the best in the state, and I practice law against lawyers that make $250 an hour, and I practice law against the ones that are paid a salary by the county, and I'll tell you, a lot of the ones that are paid by a salary by the county, they don't market, but they're a hell of a lot better than the ones that are charging you $250 an hour. So I think we have good legal counsel, at least in DeKalb County. I can't speak about Fulton, I can't speak about Clayton, because I don't practice there, but I think we have good legal counsel in our county. At the end of the day, it's a safety issue, and it's a proof issue. If you're on the side of the road and it's your word against an officer's word, it's not very smart to engage in any type of confrontation, verbal or otherwise, with that individual. When it comes into court, it's going to be your word against that person's word. And also, if that confrontation escalates into a physical confrontation, you have put your life in jeopardy at that point, because there is no police officer in America that is going to allow you to win a fight because he or she is armed. And their concern is that you will take their weapon. And so the best thing that any person, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, or otherwise, can do if there is a confrontation with a police officer is to comply, and if they disagree with the way that they're treated, you exercise your God-given constitutional rights, hire a lawyer, and make a complaint to Internal Affairs.
May I just say that Fulton County has one of the best public defender's office. I serve on the supervisory panel for that. They are trained. They undergo just amazing kinds of training and are very well prepared.
I am so sorry. We've got 5 minutes. We need obviously a longer session. We need to drill down further. This is just skimming the surface. I did the best I could to manage time. Judge, I'll recognize you. All right. And I know that we've got 4 or 5 people here. We've got somebody in the back. I'm doing the best I can, guys.
We know you're doing great.
I'm a product of the projects, if you will. I came from East Lake Meadows, the old East Lake Little Vietnam, all of those things, and I am proof that you can get out and be a productive citizen. But what I think is it was a village for sure back then that raised us, and that we had teachers that really cared about education and really wanted to educate us versus some of the teachers nowadays. My question is, a lot of grandparents are raising these children nowadays. You have their mothers and fathers on drugs or drug dealers or what have you. What can we do to go back into the community to help the elderly that's raising these children and just don't have the strength to rear him up the way she reared her children?
If I can, I believe in divine order. Kim Anderson was in my office yesterday. Kim, for those of you who don't know her, is the CEO of Families First. And the thing that we were talking about yesterday is building villages, communities, where you have senior citizens there and you have parents who've adopted children and parents who are foster care children as a way of the seniors giving back and the kids benefiting, because we've got to recreate villages. Because it was, you know, Miss Jones down the street and Mr. Willie round the corner, and we did everything we could for them because that's how we were raised. All right, you are going to have a fit, Doctor. And I didn't mean to ignore you. I'm trying to accommodate everybody. Yes, sir.
And I don't have a question. I have just a suggestion. In particular to the comment that Judge Wyatt made about the connection with institutions of higher learning. If you want to modify and increase your impact, I would strongly recommend that you connect with Atlanta Metropolitan State College. It's the fastest growing institution in this city, and it is also made up of 95% Georgia residents, and you cannot graduate from Atlanta Metro without being a registered voter. So it's a requirement. We're the only school doing that. So if you want to get to direct impact, you need to connect with them. I spent 10 and a half years in the English Center, and I love it. It's great. But the impact is at Atlanta Metro. And you can make those connections because these people are from the community. And in here today with me are professors and students from Atlanta because they care. Make your impact here.
I appreciate it, Judge. Let's work. And then we're going to do a quick wrap. I know.
Just very quick too. Let me commend my little brother, Robert James. He is my little brother. I love him. I don't always agree with him, but I love him. To the judges, to Judge Moore, thank you. You talked about vestiges, and for those of you that don't know me, I feel connected to both of you. I'm here before Judge Hatchet.
Yes.
Very innovative young lady. Judge Moore's late husband was one of my instructors, and he used to talk about the vestiges of slavery. I'm a graduate of Howard University School of Law. Let's keep it real. But Judge Moore and Judge Hatchet have been innovators, and what they're saying to you, and I'm going to bring it back, I'm going to finish my remarks with Attorney Mathis. What they're saying to you, you can come to these forums all day long. You can sit down and you can clap, you can applause. They've got church going on next door. We've got the intellectual piece going on in here. But the truth is, if you don't connect, if you don't make or take the time to do it, it won't happen. For Judge Moore, if you ever appeared in her courtroom when she was on the bench, eloquent, smart, intellectual. I'd like to think that she sees me on the bench now that I'm a reflection of something that I learned from her, how to be professional, how to be thorough, how to be trained up. So they've connected in ways that they may not know. The same with Judge Hatchet. Used to be scared to death to go to juvenile court because she was raised and came wearing leather and doing her thing. But let me tell you what, I'm going to bring it back. That's the fun part of what we did, but they were real. But Ms. Mathis said something to you, and Attorney James said something to you about bonds. I have bond hearings tomorrow. No, I will not give a 15, 16, or 17-year-old bond who's been up in your house taking your big screen down. I know that mom and daddy who goes to Green Forest Baptist and raised them up in the power of the Lord. I know that they weren't raised up to snatch like we saw those kids in Latonia coming out of school, snatching the big screen off the TV where the lady said, had I been home, one of them wouldn't have got out. Now, no, I don't give them a bond. And let me tell you why I don't give them a bond. Because you'll be the first ones to say when they snatch up your car the next day, Judge, why'd you let them out? I don't let them out because I don't have the confidence that they will not reoffend. And that's the law in Georgia. If I don't believe they can stay out of trouble, I don't have to let them out. And Ms. Mathis said something. Look, guys, we're here on a graded, sponsored event. If you don't believe you can help, walk down the maternity ward of Grady Hospital right now. We could adjourn right now. Walk down to Grady Hospital. Go through the maternity ward and say, baby, who's at risk? Do you know who the daddy of the baby is? Do you have a place to go when you get out of here? Do you have diapers? Do you have a nursery? They're at risk at Grady right now. You want to connect, you can walk over to Grady. You don't have to wait till they're 15, 16, 17. You can start it as soon as they're born in the world. I'm Judge Mark in the sky. I'm in the cab.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I know that there are other questions. I apologize in advance, otherwise I would stick around. I am on this side of the bench now. I started a national law firm, so I got to go to depositions this afternoon, and I have got to get out of here. But know that okay, write them down. Write the questions down. And I'm so sorry I'm not going to be with you for the rest of the afternoon, but let me invite you on November 12th at 6 p.m. I am conducting a free, open to the public parenting workshop. People are like, oh no, Judge, my kid's not in trouble, blah, 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 blah. No, all of our kids are at risk by virtue of the tenor of the times. And if your child is doing well, then we need to strategize for them to even do better. It's not about, my child's in trouble, so I don't need to come. It is going to be at Douglas High School. Douglas High School, November 12th at 6 p.m. It's free, it's open. Please spread the word. It will be interactive. I'm going to not preach to people. We're going to really talk about some strategies on 3 C's. Concern, communication, and cheering for our children. Lastly, I am also doing a free legal clinic on Saturday, did I say the 12th, November 12th for the parenting conference? Okay. Saturday, November 21st at 1:30, from 1:30 to 3, so we won't have you there all day.
Where?
At Elizabeth Baptist Church on Cascade Road. We're going to do an overview on constitutional issues, what happens when you encounter the police. Then we're going to have a breakout session on criminal law, workman's comp, family law, and wills. And Joey Jackson, my good friend from CNN, is flying in to do the breakout session on criminal law. So just because he's handsome, don't all y'all rush to his breakout session. So we'll have breakout sessions from 2 to 3. Elizabeth Baptist Church on Cascade. The date is November 21st. It's a Saturday. From 1:30 to 3. It's free. It's open to the public. So please spread the word. If you forget, you can go to where? Charles? No. Who will they know? Oh yeah. TheHatchetFirm.com will have both of those dates and times. Douglas High School, November 12th, 6 p.m. Elizabeth Baptist Church, November 21st is a Saturday. 1:30 to 3 we'll do a general. 1:30 to 2 we'll do a general session. 2 to 3 we'll do the breakouts in the various areas. That work? Now, before I leave, this is what I'm challenging us to do, Claire. I need you to take back to the committee. I'm challenging us to create a resource center so we can talk about the projects. We can talk about what you said, Dr. President. We can talk about resources so that we can go to a central repository and share the information. We can talk about what the 100 Black men are doing. We can talk about what's going on in this community because there's enough bad news that we need to know. We need to know what classes you're teaching and encourage people to come and register and get degrees, even if they dropped out of high school. We need a resource center that we can use. You need to know about the Truancy Project in Fulton County. It has been going on for more than 20 years. It's a way to get children off the streets and back into our classrooms. Mentors for Moms. That needs to be resurrected and replicated in this metro area. And so if we can share electronically the good news, the best practices, we aren't always reinventing
the wheel. Does that work?